Checking my sound. Yes. So greetings everyone, and welcome. This is Sherry from Spiritual Magic Journey. Just making sure that I am live on YouTube and Facebook, and I am. And I just want to welcome you and say happy Halloween, happy Samhain. I hope everyone out there is just having a wonderful, beautiful night. I also want to introduce you to Hocus P. Pocus, who is a little wizard who grants wishes on Fridays. But, of course, today's not Friday, so he's not granting any wishes. Got a little wizard hat over there on the side. And he's grant you wishes on Fridays. So I just wanted to introduce along. So all right, so tonight I wanted to do some readings, maybe. If you would like a reading, I just need your name, your first name, and your question. Just put it in the box, chat box, comment box, and I will get to it. But before we begin, and I also wanted to read some ghost stories, so this is what this video is all about. Also wanted to talk about Hurricane Helene, since I was right here in the area of where it came up through the Appalachia and the Western North Carolina, and a lot of devastation that it brought here in the Asheville area. And yeah, it's going to take many years probably to rebuild, but a lot of people are just coming together. When it came in, my electricity went off like the next day, by that Saturday evening, by 6 o'clock. So where I live in the Nashville area, I didn't really get too much of it. We got it, a lot of it, but it didn't really affect right here where I live, but it affected the Biltmore, which is downtown, and Swananoa really got hit bad. And I used to live over there. I used to live in that area, in the Swananoa area, and I live right there on the river. So if I would have been living there, probably, I don't know if I would be saving here right now. So, but just so many areas got affected. But it's just nobody expected it to be the way it came through here. Nobody was expecting any of this. Yeah, I sure, just like probably everybody else thought, yeah, Biltmore will flood, because it always floods when it rains, really hard. It always floods. Probably a little bit of flooding, but man, this one just affecting it. I wasn't prepared. Friday, I'll take my trash off. I'll go to the dump, my truck up with gas. Was another thing. It was like chaos. And people finally started getting out to see exactly what the damage was, and it was chaotic of trying to just find gas and a station that had electricity, and you could always have cash on. The only thing I can run through this, if you're ever going through catastrophe or a hurricane or a tornado, or when the lights go out, just have some cash on you. Make sure you have cash. If you know a hurricane's coming, if they say leave, which they didn't here, because we wasn't expecting it to be this bad here in the mountains. Usually when it starts coming towards us, it always stalls out, and it's mostly just rain, which more likely a lot of it was, because there was a lot of rainwater and mudslides, and the dam stuff, but we won't go into any of that. But yeah, always be prepared. Try to be prepared. I always have a full tank of gas. Have some cash on you if you can, because it was just like chaos trying to get gas, and people were just at gas stations lined up. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get gas. Of course, I'm rode around everywhere looking for gas, about to run out of gas, and can't sit in line waiting for gas for a very long time. So it was just wild. I think I finally got gas that it came through on, let's see, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday or Tuesday. So yeah, that was just, whew, yeah. And there are still people with no electricity, no internet. The internet did stay off for a whole week. Thank goodness that my electricity was on. I didn't get too much damage. There's some water leaks that came through. Not expecting it. Was not expecting it to be the way that it turned out to be. Okay. If you would like a reading, again, just put your name in with your question. And I think I'm going to start reading out of my Appalachian book that I have. I hope everyone is, well, I'm not going to say eat too much candy because this is one day. If you want to eat candy, eat some candy. This is an old Appalachian ghost book, as you could see there. Appalachian ghost storybook. It was written by Nancy and Bruce Roberts. Was published like in 1975, 78, something like that. I hope everyone can hear me out there. And the first story I'm going to read out of this book is called Laura. This is the first one I'm going to read. Can you see that? Or am I not holding it right? This is the first story I'm going to read out of the book. So let's read the first ghost story, and it is called Laura. And it says, the afternoon was gray and misty. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to turn down. I have a little music playing over here on the side, and I'm just going to quieten it down a little bit so I can read this story about Laura. It says, the afternoon was gray and misty, not the kind that Larry Huff would usually choose for a motorcycle ride. But he had just traded his old motorcycle for a new Honda, bought himself a new jacket, and the temptation to take off was irresistible. When he sped down Highway 55 out of Campbell, Kentucky, he headed towards Columbia. He had no premonition of what lay in store for him. It was a great ride with the cool mist air blowing in his face. As he swooped around the curves, there were almost no cars on the road. In fact, he must have gone 5 miles before he met one. In some places, the fog made it difficult to see the distances ahead, but there was often foggy places along the road, and Larry didn't really mind. It gave him a feeling of being in another world, a world of fluffy whiteness, and above all, quiet. He liked that, for in a small house where he lived with his parents and 4 brothers and sisters, there was often so much noise that there was no chance to think. He wasn't just sure of what it was that he wanted to be alone to think about, but sometimes he grew very angry inside, and when the clamor of voices made him make his thoughts so jerky that he couldn't make sense of whatever was gnawing at him at the moment, he could just put things together when he rode alone like this. Instead of the weather clearing, a slow drizzle rain began to fall, but Larry still did not want to turn back. As he rounded one of the curves, a small single tree near a clump of trees on his right appeared to move. But when he approached, he saw a thin-looking girl wearing a cloak walking beside the road. He stopped to ask if there was anything he could do for her, but she looked so cold and forlorn, her hair clinging wetly to her cheeks, her dress long and bedraggled. At first he thought she wasn't going to answer him, but she replied, "Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to have a ride down the road, a piece to my house." By now the drizzle had changed to a light rain, and Larry offered her his new jacket. She put it on gratefully and climbed up behind him on the motorcycle, winding her arms around his waist. He was conscious of her cold. He was conscious of the cold from her hands penetrating him even through his shirt. The ride was not a comfortable one, as her grip grew tighter, and his back felt cold as ice. They were near Cane Valley when she spoke up and pointed to the house set back from the highway. "That's where I live," she said, and Larry turned up the road towards it. It was an old farmhouse, and the girl muttered, "Quick, thank you," and ran up to the steps and into the door, closing it behind her. Larry was so glad not to have her holding onto those cold hands around his waist that he hurriedly took off. It was not until he was partway home that he remembered his new jacket. But by then it was getting quite dark, and he had no desire to return to the farmhouse that night. Next morning, he headed back down Highway 55 towards Cane Valley, and when he reached the girl's house, he went up and knocked on the door, thinking she might answer it. A woman came to the door instead. So he described the girl and said he had lent her his jacket. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how you've done it. You described my girl, Laura. Look, but she's been dead 7 years." Larry stared at her in disbelief. "Ma'am, I just can't believe it. She was real as can be. I couldn't even feel how cold and wet she was. I could even feel how cold and wet she was." "Wait a minute. I'd like for you to go with me," said the woman. She went into the house and got her coat, and he followed her back up to the top of the hill where there was a small family cemetery surrounded by a fence. As she opened the gate, he was surprised to see something that was hanging over the top of a tombstone on the far side. When he reached it, he was amazed. His jacket was draped over the tombstone, and below it, engraved on the stone, was the name Laura. The date was 7 years ago. He returned the jacket, but it was too damp to put on, even if he had wanted to. Although he kept the coat for several years, he never seemed to be able to wear it for it always. Sorry. Although he had kept the coat for several years, he never seemed able to wear it for always. After he had worn it for a few minutes, it would begin to feel cold and wet, and he would have to take it off. The jacket still looked like new, but finally one night, after trying to wear it, he became angry and threw it in the fire. A strange odor suffused the room, like a scent of flowers massed around a freshly dug grave. Larry was so terrified that he ran out of the house that night. Even now, as he tells the story, his face turns white, his eyes fill with horror, and he will never ride down Highway 55 on a foggy, rainy day again. So that is the story of Laura. And here is the picture. We want to see a girl standing out, waiting for someone to pick her up. Hi, Pam. How are you? Are you still here? I think everybody's picking up strange dreams. These days, more dreams are being more vivid than ever as we are going through so many different changes here, and the veil is so thin at this time, which reminds me we need to do um, pay a little homage to our ancestors here. I'm going to ring the bell, and we're going to pay homage to the ancestors um, that came before us. Thank the ancestors that came before us as we pay homage to you. We say thank you, sending you love and light, and praying that you are at peace at this time. Also, I want to send you hugs, loves, and kisses. Now, I want to call in my spirit team. We say thank you, thank you, thank you. As this goes on into November the 1st and 2nd, which is the Day of the Dead, where you do pay homage to the ancestors. Oh yeah, I've been dreaming of Mama, which I was, before the Hurricane Helene came, could not sleep. I could not sleep at all. I did not get any sleep before that hurricane come. Couldn't get any. I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. And then I think she's trying to relay a message to you, Pam. This person is trying to relay a message to you. And sometimes when family members come through, or someone it's either way it's a message that is trying to get through to you, and or if it's family members, especially now because I've been having some um, I haven't been on a lot because of health issues that I'm still not sure what they are. I've been dreaming of I had to have a procedure. Um, and sometimes you're going through a big procedure or something's a big major transformation that's getting ready to happen in your life, you will start dreaming about family members. So I feel like that she is for you, particularly Pam, is trying to get a message through to you, trying to make a connection because it is, again, we're going through this where the veil is really thin now. So you want to try to reach out to her, you possibly could. Again, pay homage to the ancestors as we are going through this Samhain and Halloween and November the 1st and 2nd, the Day of the Dead that is coming up also, and it's just a really the veil is in right now. So that's what I'm picking up there. She should make contact. Do you and actually just to let you know that she is there. Um, you know, and I feel like you haven't forgotten her, and she hasn't definitely haven't forgotten you. So maybe lean into that a little more. Start asking questions. What is it that you're trying to show me? I hope these lights are not blinking behind me and it's affecting anyone. If it is, I can definitely turn them off. It shouldn't be blinking. I kind of see them moving a little bit like that. So I don't know if that would be an issue. Just let me know and I will definitely cut those off. Yeah. So I feel like, yeah, it's just a message. So again, leaning to that and see, ask questions. Always ask questions and you will get the answers. for that. I'm thinking about, let's see, another story before I have to go or before it gets too dark. I can't see anything. And I was going to pick out another one. And that was going to be, this is a really old book. Oh, this is the one I want to do. A Visitor from the Dead. This is fitting for today and tomorrow and the next day or any day if you get visitors from the dead. Just grabbing a little water before you begin. And this is A Visitor from the Dead. It says, Jessie Jackson was a pretty blonde girl whose husband was a miner, but John never seemed satisfied to stay at one mine for long. It always looked to him like the grass was greener elsewhere. And that is what sealed his doom. When John and Jessie came to Grant Town, West Virginia, they moved into one of the mine company houses. It was a monstrous, creepy and creaky old place that the company hadn't been able to get anyone else to live in. The last miner who occupied it years ago died in an accident in the mines, and there was talk that the house was haunted. John just laughed at that. He told Jessie they needed all the space for the family they were going to have, and he would fix the roof, the sagging front porch, the rotten floorboards, and the house would be as good as new. But Jessie, try as she would, never could seem to make the house look cheerful. One winter morning, Jackson took the lunch his wife had fixed for him and set off to work as usual. It was so cold he could see his breath curl in the air like tobacco smoke. Under his feet, the ground was crisp, and his boots slid now and then on puddles, turned to dirty glass. He had some old feelings on his way to the mine that morning, and he mentioned to his buddy, Tony Dominique. Although he had left Jessie, it was like he missed her already. He couldn't understand why he felt so sad. You think you two were courting, joked Tony, as he couldn't get a smile out of Jackson, who just shook his head and didn't say a word. They rode the buggy, a small locomotive used to haul coal cars, and when Dominique got off at his level, he said, "Meet you at the work." Jackson, who was working one level below, nodded. It was early afternoon when Dominique heard a terrible explosion in the depths of the mine. It seemed to come from beneath his feet. The men near him began running. He ran with them as fast as he could through the tunnel towards the main line. There he saw other miners racing through the main tunnel. Had a fire started on the level below? Would it spread? Would the main tunnel soon be filled with smoke? Just ahead of him, he saw jumping into the buggy. He saw him jumping into the buggy. His chest hurt. His legs felt as if they would give away underneath him. But he kept running as he managed to get in one of the last cars. When he reached the surface, he began looking for Jackson. But he was nowhere to be found. By now, wisps of smoke were coming out of the mouth of the mine. The next morning, there were knots of people standing around the entrance of the tunnel. The family of miners who had not yet come out on a buggy, and several of the top of the men in the coal mine company. Jessie Jackson was there with uh, with her two little boys, waiting to hear whether the rescue crew that had gone into the mine, but they would find any of the missing men still alive. Finally, they came out of the mine. They had found the place where the explosion had occurred, but the men near it had all burned to death, and John Jackson was one of them. Times were hard, and Jessie had only a little money to support herself and the two children. They sprung after the spring after John's death. She married Bill James, who had been one of her husband's close friends. Jessie would get up early, pack Bill's lunch, and always would go to work in the mines. Then she would go back to bed for a while. About 6 months later, after her remarriage, Jessie began to see a ghost of her first husband. Each morning after she went back to bed, the ghost would appear in the rocking chair near her. He would sit there staring for a while and then disappear. Jessie was so frightened she couldn't move. This went on for over a month until she became more and more upset and had to be treated by one of the mining company doctors. The doctor thought a change might be good for her and advised her to leave Grant Town for a few weeks and go home to visit her parents. When she returned, she and her husband moved into a new house, about a half mile from her old home. Several weeks went by, and much to her relief, the ghost did not appear. But one morning she had just got back to bed when she happened to look over at the rocker, and there sat the apparition of her dead husband. She screamed, and the specter disappeared. But the very next morning it appeared again, and there it was. "What do you want? Tell me," the terrified Mrs. James cried out. The ghost motioned with his hands for her to come with him. Upset as she was, she put on her coat and quickly began to follow the shadowy figure down the road. The ghost kept 10 or 15 feet ahead of her, drifting noiselessly but purposely along. And there was no mistaking the fact that the spirit of her first husband seemed to know where it was going. Despite her fear, she went on. And when the ghost turned off the road that led to the mine, she turned too. As she arrived, she was just in time to see her second husband standing with a group of other miners, waiting to get into the buggy that would take them to the mine. She called him over to her and explained how she had been led there by the ghost. Her husband became angry, for by now he thought all of this was some sort of foolishness. But Jessie began to tremble, so that he decided to take her to the doctor himself. At lunchtime, when Bill and Jessie returned to the mine, they saw a crowd gathered around the entrance. Some of the women were crying as they held babies in their arms, while the others had children clinging to their skirts. Right after they had left, 10 men had been buried in a slate that had fallen from the roof of one of the tunnels. The very tunnel Bill James would have been working in that day. Jessie fell into her husband's arms and began to sob with relief. If it had not been for the ghost of her first husband, her second one would have died along with the other miners. They were both convinced that this ghost had returned from the dead to save Bill James's life. And from then on, they placed flowers on his grave regularly, her ex-husband's grave regularly. So that was a visitor from the dead coming to warn. Sometimes it can be warnings too. Sometimes it can be warnings. All right, guys, I think I'm going to with that. I hope everyone's having a beautiful, wonderful, and safe Halloween out there. I don't know when I'll be going live again on a Thursday. It'll probably be sometime hopefully right before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving, I will return. I'll be sure to let you guys know. So bye, everyone.